welcome to Cage Minds Uncensored. I'm Micah Frankel. Shout out to Edwin Ruiz, Mac10. Thank you for the support. Give them a like when you're on Facebook. That's MMACK10. This week, there's a ton of action to talk about. We have national stuff, local stuff. Get started on the local scene. This week, like the Cage Minds Combat Sports News Facebook page, that place will be having a ton of photos going up from the Jackson's MMA Series 25 event, courtesy of Franklin Romero and Sal Gomez Photo Works, who went up to Buffalo Thunder to cover the event. Jan Argueta just destroys Jess Saunders using his wrestling, showing off a bit of his striking. After several fights in a row, having fallen out, Dan very happy to be able to perform and dominated. Jesse Morehouse gets a submission victory, and you also had Nate Cullison remaining undefeated with a first-round knockout. Jorge Martinez gets his revenge. He was losing the striking. Jesse Tafoya, strike to grapple, went for the takedown, got caught up in a guillotine choke, forced to submit. The co-main event, still undefeated, Josh Moreno showed off his striking and once again uses a guillotine choke. The second time in his career he's finished a guy trying to take him down. Moreno 4-0. This one was a big one, beating Kelly, who now was a 10-fight vet. Big things coming for Josh Moreno. Also the same thing for the winner of the main event. And it was Jess Martinez remaining undefeated, taking down and fighting the rear naked choke just under a minute left in the fight, submitting Henry Barahona. A big win for Martinez, who I may be talking about in a minute from the event I was at. I was down in Las Cruces, New Mexico at the American Fight League Southwest Brawl event. You can see the event on the Cage Minds Combat Sports News Facebook page with my commentary, some highlights from that event. Ivan Rios remains undefeated as an amateur, quickly taking down Emmanuel Berman, getting the back, finding the rear naked choke. You had Tabari Grubbs rebounding from his loss to Aaron Taylor at the Jackson Wink Fight Night with a strong performance against Richard Villegas. Villegas had his moments, showed off the technical striking of a long amateur kickboxing background, but it was the takedowns of Grubbs dominating every round, and I mean even one of the more spectacular moments in the third round. Photographer that night for the Southwest Brawl event was my nephew Dominic. Had him with me. Grubbs is actually in mount and says, "Take a picture of me." We had that moment. I also have Tabari, as they're rolling around the mount, look up at me and ask me how commentary is going that night. So definitely some showmanship from Tabari Grubbs. Also, on the amateur card, you saw John Calderon. An intentional kick turns into a knee when Anthony Navarez does his level change for a takedown, running right into the knee, busting him open above his right eye. Navarez to his back, quick to the ground and pound, is Calderon for the victory. We had two amateur title fights, and Ricky Maynez, after 6 opponents dropping out on short notice, Jose Holguin would not be much competition for Maynez. Maynez dominating the fight with his right outside leg kick, battering Holguin, becoming the American Fight League Amateur Bantamweight Champion. James Pleasant and Richard Jennings exchange kicks. Pleasant jumps on an opportunity, seeing Jennings back, drags the fight to the floor, takes the back, gets the rear naked choke, becoming the American Fight League Amateur Featherweight Champion. In the co-main event, you had Juan Gandara remaining undefeated, 2-0 now as a pro. Showed off his striking, was able to beat up Xavier Estrada. Estrada was looking to land big shots, winging away at them, looking for the home run. It was Gandara mixing things up, firing off knees, his punches, then setting up a kick that would catch Estrada with the shin right across the head. Estrada would drop to his knees, follow-up punches, Stanovedra would jump in, stop the fight. Gandara now 2-0. I believe he still has another fight with the American Fight League. But right now, maybe it's time for an undefeated matchup. Juan Gandara, Jess Martinez, possibly anybody. 2 undefeated featherweights. I'm not sure if it's in-state competition, where either guy goes past this fight, so that's why I'm throwing them at each other. quite possibly for Gandaro, who is from El Paso, some Texas options. For Martinez, the options I believe would be facing somebody from Colorado most likely, or maybe I'll have another thought for him later here in my little show. Main event. Real quick, got to touch on the main event got changed. Originally, this one was scheduled to be a little bit further down the professional card, but with Paco Castilla's fight being canceled against Brian Castillo, and then Danny Grado missing weight for his bout with Steven Ortega, we end up with Randy McCarty versus Chris Leva in the main event. A fight that would go the distance. In the first round, McCarty would get a takedown. He would have some control time. Loved the knees he was landing to the body while on the ground. He would try to take the back. Leva would spin into the guard. They would nullify each other enough that the fight would get stood back up. McCarty would take the opportunity and steal another late takedown before the end of the round. And I believe that's what edges the first round in the favor of McCarty. Even if it didn't and you want to go 10-8 with Leva, it was a close round. Round 2, dominated by McCarty, getting the takedowns, landing numerous ground and pound shots from the side ride wrestler position. Leva being down on all fours, McCarty putting his left shin across the ankles, not allowing Leva to stand up, and pounding with the right punches. There was a point where you saw a plethora of unanswered strikes being landed, none of them looking super significant, probably why the ref didn't stop it, but there was such a quantity that I don't think there would have been too huge of an argument had the ref jumped in. Second round, definitely for McCarty, but the question gets raised. Do we go 10-9? Was that 10-8? Was there enough damage for 10-8? Possibly a 10-8. Then we go to the third round, where McCarty gets the takedown. Again, takes the back. Slippery Chris Leva able to turn around into the guard. Remain on top for a good majority of that third round. Definitely take that third round. We go to the judges' scorecard. I could have seen anything happening there where you could have gave the first and the third to Leva, where you could have gave the first and the second to McCarthy, where you could have gave the first and the third to Leva, but did a 10-8 in the second round. So I was expecting anything would go to the cards, and actually all three judges thought the same. Rounds 1 and 2 to McCarty, 29-28, getting back in the win column. The Zia Fight team not happy with the scorecards. I honestly had to watch the fight back to say I see where the refs were coming from. Not the most egregious referee or judging error of the night. The worst thing of the night would honestly be Stan Saavedra. I felt he was really quick on the gun, to the stand-ups, to breaking up the clinch, to getting the fighters off the cage, to separating them. If it was kickboxing, if it was boxing, a great job. Muay Thai, MMA, you have to allow them to grapple and work. They're going to get into these positions, allow them to work out of it. So that was the night at the American Fight League. John Calderon, definitely the highlight of the night, with that knee catching Anthony Navarez square between the eyes. That was a crazy moment. Now, as we talked about, and as I said, there was a ton going on, even on the national scene. Like you had Titan FC 50 out in Florida this past week, and that was on Friday night, UFC Fight Pass. We got the results for that event, like we do for the Jackson's MMA series, for Southwest Brawl 8, up at CageMinds.com. So Cuban wrestler Gustavo Ballart rebounds from his first career defeat. The mighty, mouse-sized Cuban wrestler got on the inside, winged away with big bombs, got a couple takedowns, and finds his way back into the win column. Uros Jursic is able to defeat Jose Caceres, a big right hand, hurts the champion, and then Uros jumps on top of the neck, getting the guillotine, submitting the submission specialist, and becoming the new Titan FC welterweight champion. And in the main event, missing weight once again proves costly. Sidney Outlaw weighs in heavy, so his fight with Hush Manfio is no longer for the Titan FC lightweight title. Outlaw out-wrestles Manfio in the first and third rounds to get the unanimous decision victory in such a fashion that Titan FC will give Outlaw a second opportunity to make weight. So Outlaw Manfio for the lightweight title of Titan FC will be rebooked down the line Full results, again, at cageminds.com. We had LFA action in Phoenix, Arizona. You had on short notice AJ Robb, like 2 weeks notice from the Jackson Wink Academy, stepping up to take on Mario Batista, an undefeated fighter from the lab. Robb came out looking for the knockout, swinging hard, had Batista backpedaling into the second round. Both guys had landed big shots. Robb had scored a takedown. They're in the clinch. Batista sees some neck, jumps on top of it, sinks in the guillotine, and is able to force the tap in what was a spectacular 2-round fight. Batista undefeated at 5-0. Robb can't hold your head low, taking a fight on short notice, jumping in there against another undefeated prospect. It was a great showing from Robb, an even better showing from Batista. Keone Diggs remains undefeated. His right outside leg kick just destroys Andy Varela to the point where there's a knee injury, and Diggs jumps on top, gets the ground and pound finish in the second round. Controversial split decision victory. Richard Palencia defeats Kevin Worth by split decision off of takedowns and really no damage. First round was Palencia's, but it seemed like the second and third off of damage, off of effective striking, which is the first category, would definitely go in the favor of Kevin Worth. But the volume of takedowns without damage gets Palencia the hometown win. Kamula Kirk returns from like a year and a half away to very quickly submit Boheim Kamaru with a rear naked choke. Then up to the main event, we expected fireworks. Early on, it was Aguilera stalking Matthew Franco. Franco, a big counter left hook, scores the knockdown. The jab was on point, and that follow-up left hand kept backing Aguilera off all night. First round was Franco's. Second round, Aguilera got his grappling on, took it to the ground, was beating Franco up in the very popular wrestling ride position. I saw it all over the place this weekend. But in the third round, it was Franco keeping space, landing punches. Both guys had their hand raised at the end of the night, but Aguilera was unable to really land anything significant in the third round. A very close fight, but Matthew Franco walks away victorious. Also, at that LFA 44 card, they had an in-ring interview. They don't do that much when it's not a winner of the event, but LFA announced that at LFA 46, they're going to be in Virginia doing the event on a military base. You're going to have 8-0 James Nakashima against 10-0 Kyle Stewart. Kyle Stewart was a gunman in the Air Force. Both guys Arizona natives, so they got to get in, do a little talking, have a moment. That one's going to be a great welterweight fight. Expect the winner, James Nakashima, Kyle Stewart. I'd like to say to move on to the UFC, but the way the UFC has been operating, it's most likely that they're going to have to be involved with the Contender Series before actually getting that call-up that I believe they've both probably already earned. Then we also had on Saturday night Bellator. We're heading across the country basically. Now we're in Pechanga, California, where Bellator was back for, I believe, the 10th time in the promotion's history. You had top wrestling prospects Terrell Fortune, Joey Davis, and Ed Ruth dominate their bouts on the Bellator app prelims. Fortune and Davis also working that side ride wrestling position, dominating, controlling their opponents. Fortune found the second round TKO. Davis ran his out to the decision. Ruth showed off striking. It really feels like out of the prospects, the high-level wrestling prospects that they've brought in. We know that Aaron Pico is on a different level, getting these main card kind of highlighted fights each time, and right behind him in potential is Ed Ruth with just a tremendously high ceiling and fight acumen. His striking coming together so nicely and cleanly. Yet on the main card, Juan Archuleta start to grind up Robbie Peralta, then mixing in flying knees all the way to the third round, where the level change followed up by the overhand right turns out the lights on Peralta. UFC vet free agent acquisition Valerie Letourneau hands Christina Williams her first professional loss. It was Letourneau turning to her grappling when she needed to in the first and third rounds, losing the striking battle in the second. but does pronounce herself as the flyweight number 1 contender. Sayed Awad breaks his hand early on against Ryan Couture, finds a sense of urgency and also a straight right down the pipe that definitely stunned Couture, then turned on the gas, went to work with his striking, and didn't let up until Couture dropped. Awad gets the victory. The main event, McFarlane, Lara. It was Lara not being able to separate and use her karate skills, engaging in a grappling battle for all 3 rounds that it lasted, and really being on the defensive for most of the fight. Was in the top position in the first round, but wasn't able to be actively offensive into the third round, where she got caught up in an armbar, a couple adjustments, and Ilima-Lei McFarlane has defended her title, accepting the challenge of Valerie Letourneau, and offering Bellator the opportunity to be the first big-time MMA promotion to go out there to Hawaii. McFarlane wants to defend her belt in Hawaii. We'll see if Bellator makes that happen. That was the weekend that was. There's a couple oh no moments that are also coming up now. We talked about DAZN and their deal with Bellator. The first rumors of what the price point could be, $15 per month. I say, oh no, that's a pretty penny in comparison to what Netflix, UFC Fight Pass, and WWE Network are offering. And once you get all of these, and you have to get your Sling TV and your Hulu, cutting the cord doesn't even make sense anymore. So this week it's International Fight Week. There is some action outside of the UFC. On Thursday night in Washington, D.C., you do have the third event of the Pro Fighters League of this 2018 season. The main event, submission specialist, former Strikeforce champion Jake Shields against finisher, all 13 of his victories by finish, Ray Cooper III. The card, which will feature welterweights and middleweights, also includes UFC vets Bogoran Velicic, Danilo Villafort, Yao Zeffirino, John Howard, Rick Story, Yuri Villafart, Gashan Umatov, Eddie Gordon, also Bruno Santos, Paul Daly, who also fought with, Paul Bradley, who I've also fought with the UFC and Bellator, not to mention Bellator vet Herman Tirado. So that is going to be Thursday night on NBC Sports with prelims on Facebook Watch. Not to mention Thursday night on UFC Fight Pass, with it being International Fight Week, we do have the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Bruce Connell and Art Davie in the Pioneers and Contributors section, not to mention the athletes. Obviously, the pioneer of the UFC Women's Division, Ronda Rousey, who convinced Dana White that she was marketable enough for him to invest in women in the octagon. Matt Serra, former UFC champion, tough winner, pulled off that amazing upset over Georgia St. Pierre. And not to mention the UFC 139 bout between Dan Henderson and Mauricio Shogun, who one of the greatest back and forth brawls that we have ever seen. So that's what you have to look forward to on Thursday night. Fight festivities in Las Vegas, the 2 events in 2 nights. Friday night at the T-Mobile Arena, you have the TUF 27 finale. Brad Tavares versus Israel Adesanya in the main event. The Hawaiian Tavares is on a 4-fight win streak. He's the number 8 ranked contender in the division, fighting out of Extreme Couture. 12-3 in the UFC, has grown up in the promotion, a technical fighter, a former football player, taking on 75-fight professional kickboxing vet, 13-0 in MMA with 12 wins by knockout. The style bender, Nigeria's Israel Adesanya, devastating knees, kicks, coming along as a mixed martial artist. It's going to be a great main event. Another fight to highlight on that card, you have top women's flyweights, Roxanne Modafferi, Barb Honchak, Invicta FC vets. It's going to be an interesting stylistic matchup where you have Barb, who is much more of a classical striker, much more technical, the unorthodox style of Modafferi, who's great with her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And this is the tough finale. Mike Terenzio and Joe Gonatelli are fighting to see who will remain undefeated, become the next Ultimate Fighter. Luis Pena, who had a broken foot, gets his second chance. taking on Richie Smullen, who also gets a second chance as his muscles shut down. He wasn't able to compete at the event. What's also going to be a striking affair on the prelims is Alex Caceres versus Martin Bravo. You get the sense that, once again, Caceres is fighting for his job, has to have a big performance. Same goes for the loser of this fight, could be Leave Town. Matt Bissett, the former CES featherweight champion, faces former Legacy featherweight champion. These guys both were on the Contender Series. Steven Peterson. This is going to be a brawl, but I wonder if it comes into play that Bissett is just, I think, the more technical, the slicker striker. It's going to be an interesting brawl. Not to mention at middleweight, Oscar Piocha versus Gerald Mershot. Somebody's going to get finished in that fight. That's what you have going on Thursday night between UFC Fight Pass and FS1. That's the Tough 27 finale. Saturday, the feature attraction of the weekend, what we've been waiting for. I feel like two super fights really on one card. They're both title fights. You have Brian Ortega, T-City, finally challenging Max Bless Holloway for the featherweight title. I'm in such anticipation of that one. It's just the co-main event. The main event, DC, the light heavyweight champion, challenging Stipe Miocic, trying to accomplish something that nobody has. Those two belts at the same time, light heavyweight and heavyweight. Ortega, the undefeated number one contender, 6-0 in the octagon, should be 7-0. 14-0, should be 15-0. The one no contest after, the bad drug test for the marijuana. 7 submissions, a killer. He has that sniper ability with the submissions. You're done that quick. Coming off of a first-round knockout of Frankie Edgar that solidified him as the number one contender. Frankie was doing good till he ate the uppercut and got taken out. You saw that Cub Swanson was doing very well on the feet until he got into a slight clinch situation and then got submitted by the guillotine of Brian Ortega. Ortega has been down on the cards before, has felt adversity, and has beat tough vets like the guys we mentioned, not to mention Clay Guida and Thiago Tavares. Holloway, though, ever since it looked like he was about to be released from the UFC because of a losing streak, has won 12 straight. His last 3 are third-round TKOs, taking out Anthony Pettis and Jose Aldo twice, solidifying himself as the featherweight champion. The strengths of Holloway on this fight, he is the bigger fighter. He's slightly taller. He's longer in the legs. Their reach is actually the same. He has the better movement, the better mixing of targets with his striking. Need to stay away from the kicks. You have to watch the right hand returning and the elbows on the inside. Avoid the clinches and put together your volume of punches and elbows if you can. Holloway does his work with that striking, going from the body to the head and overwhelming his opponent and making them wilt. Ortega is the finisher that hits you with something big or is able to control the fight. Such an interesting chess match to play out. Cormier, the Louisiana native, training out of the American Kickboxing Academy in San Jose, California, the former Oklahoma State Olympic team wrestler, the 3-time now defending light heavyweight champion, now that we erase John Jones from existence from some of these things. Cormier has been very successful at heavyweight, but he didn't fight somebody as young, as powerful, as skilled as Miocic. Cormier walks through a lot of big shots to initiate the clinch, to be able to pressure, to make his opponents wilt. I don't know if that's going to be possible against Miocic. Miocic strikes backing up much better than Volkan Ozdemir or Anthony Rumble Johnson have. I think he can also, with his size, with his leverage advantage in the height game, create problems for Cormier in the clinch. Who has the deeper gas tank could be a big implement into who's going to win this fight. Miocic, 18 wins, 14 finishes, 10 knockouts, has finished 9 in the first round. I don't think you can get DC out in the first round, but in the third or fourth round, I think there's a big opportunity for Miocic to get the finish. It's a spectacular main event and co-main event. You also got 2 fights that I'm sure are going to end in knockouts on the main card. At heavyweight, Francis Ngannou against Derek Lewis. Neither guy has the gas for a second round. Let's see how hard Lewis goes for the takedown, or does he try to match power with Ngannou? Gokhan Saki, another marvelous kickboxer, returns to the octagon. He's taking on Khalil Roundtree. I feel that there's a real pride in this for Roundtree. He wants to knock out the kickboxer. That could be dangerous. Paulo Costa versus Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall was the hot flavor of the month at middleweight for a long time, and now the top prospect is Acosta. Can Acosta knock out Hall? I think he can. Mike Perry, on very short notice, taking on Paul Felder. Paul Felder on very short notice, jumping up to replace Yancy Medeiros so that Mike Perry can remain on the card. This one is going to be hectic, chaotic, back and forth striking. Look for that one to be in the running for fight of the night. But this is a stat card. Bonuses are going to be hard to come by. Rob Font is in the top 10 of the bantamweights. He wants to make it to the top 5. He can steal a lot of luster if he's able to defeat Rafael Sunsao, who has been kind of disrespected and overlooked. He beat Marlon Moraes. Marlon Moraes now, after the split decision win over John Dodson and 2 timely knockouts, is knocking on the door of a title shot where Sunsao still has to make an impact. Rob Font, very smooth, very technical. Let's see if the speed of Sunsao gives him problems. Curtis Melender, patient, courteous, and has a heck of a way of setting up his head kicks. Very devastating. Taking on Max Griffin, who's going to have to make this a brawl. Daniel Hooker is going to want to strike and keep it long against tremendous grappler Gilbert Burns, who has found his power. A big opportunity for Burns. Also in the fight past prelims, you got the dynamic unorthodox striker Landon Venata taking on Dakar Close from the MMA Lab. Close is going to want to grind and cut down the distance of Venata. You got UFC 226 this Saturday. It's a stat card. I'm so looking forward to it. Again, there was a couple things that make you go wow in the MMA scene. There was a lot of great fights. There's a lot of great fights coming up. Keep up with them and me at cageminds.com. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at cagemindsMMA. Cage Minds Combat Sports News on Facebook, Cage Minds MMA Show on YouTube. And once again, thank you Edwin Ruiz and Mac 10 for the support. Thank you for listening.